where the hinges on the barn door are rusted shut. They used to open wide for my pickup truck. And the numbers on the mailbox don't hang straight. It hasn't seen the postman since '98. And the grass grows past the fenders on the massive Ferguson. Its bright red cowling turned pink by the sun. The rusty things down a dusty road, some broke down, some just old rusty things that can't be sold. They're filled with memories that won't be told. Well, the trees that line the road all died out. They couldn't take the heat or the damned old drought. Crops were thin, jobs were scarce, and I wasn't the college type, so I enlisted in the army and left to join the fight. And by the time that I returned, the bank had called the loan. Dad was in the grave, Mom was in the home. A rusty thing down a dusty road, some broke down, some just old rusty things that can't be sold, filled with memories that won't be told. Well, I moved to town, took a job at the factory, punched a clock for 20 years, 6 days a week. Then the foreman said he's sorry, but he had to let us go, 'cause they moved our jobs down to Mexico. And everybody says it's coming back someday, but I think it's more likely we'll all rust away. A rusty thing down a dusty road, some broke down, some of us just old rusty things that can't be sold, filled with memories that won't be told. Now I've done the odd job, and I've been the crossing guard. I've helped out at the church and mowed the widow's yard. Now I'm pushing 80, and it's pushing back on me, but it hasn't pushed me down or brought me to my knees. And when I reach the end of my usefulness, don't leave me out to rust, just lay me down to rest. Rusty things down a dusty road, some broke down, some just old rusty things that can't be sold, filled with memories that won't be told.
Goodness gracious. Welcome to the Too Late to Quit podcast. This is your host, Jeff Iftikharuddin, and you just listened to Rusted Things by Roger Edmundson, who just so happens to be with me here in person in the Too Late to Quit podcast studios. And I want to give a quick little intro about why I asked and Roger gratefully accepted the invitation to come here on the podcast. There is an amazing open mic at a place in Austin, Texas called the NeWorlDeli. And I was sitting there one night waiting to perform, and Roger got up on stage. And there are several moments in my life where I remember the very first time I got chills when I heard a song, and I was listening to Roger play this song, and I felt these tears welling up in my eyes, and the entire room was silent. You could hear a pin drop, and I was stunned, not at just the melody, not just at Roger's voice or his playing or the chords, but the whole combination for me was what inspired me to start making music in the first place. And so I went up and spoke briefly to Roger, and I've looked forward to hearing him play every time I go to this open mic. And I asked him if he wanted to be a guest, because I wanted to share his story and also just get to ask him all these questions I've had about these songs. So Roger, thank you so much for being here. This is an honor for me to have you here.
Well, I'm always honored anytime somebody wants to invite me to their studio or home. So
what I was thinking, because when Roger came here, we were just chatting in my kitchen, and it made me think that I want to have like a microphone in there, because all of there's so many. I knew the first time that I heard Rusted Things that I wanted to know more about who you are as a person, because you can't write songs like that without having lived some things that give you that feeling. And I had the idea of kind of wanting to go in a logical way, but I have a feeling I'm just going to jump around. If I remember properly, and if you're okay with talking about this, did you tell me that you started writing songs when you were 50?
Yeah, I was, my first song I wrote, well, it's, to put it in proper context, the first song I wrote was about Katrina.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been, 2005 I can't even remember. It's been so long ago. And I was moved you saw it, you watched it for so long. But anyway, that was the first time I did it. And I've always wanted to write songs, because I've always written radio commercials, brochures, press releases, copy. I was just a hired writer and marketing guy for almost 50 years. And I've always wanted to put it into that form, and that just happened. And after that, I went, well, let's do something else. But yeah, I'm a late bloomer.
Can you walk me through? So, and one of the reasons why that I wanted to invite you on this podcast, one, just based on your music alone and your performance, but then when I heard that brief tidbit of your story, I was blown away. Because the reason that I started this podcast is that I remember, I think I was 32, and somebody told me like, oh, well, you're too old for XYZ. And I remember it struck me as such an odd thing to say, because it felt so illogical to me, because I was like, but I have all these ideas, and I feel mentally strong, and I feel that I want to tell all these stories. I don't know if hubris is the right word, but the power that some people feel that they have to determine, now you shall stop, or this, you will not do this anymore, or as a word that gets thrown around a lot today is cringe, that if you do something, if you're a singer-songwriter or a pop artist and you're past 17 years old or 18 years old, somehow you're over the hill has always seemed very bizarre to me. And I have so many friends who are north of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 that are making music because of something that I feel we all understand, where it's this almost this necessity. And I want, if you can hear the sound of my voice, I want you to remember that it's always the right time to start. And so this is why I have so many questions, because when I saw you, when I first saw you, I was like, oh, this guy has been doing this his whole life. And so let's back it up. Can you please take me back to the very beginning about where you grew up and how your life first intersected with music?
Well, I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and I think my life first intersected with music when I was 5 years old. And I was at the home show at the Coliseum there in Lubbock, and out on the parking lot of the home show, there was one of those old freight trailers, and it had the side that dropped down and became a stage. And the opening act, the performer was Buddy Holly.
Oh my gosh.
And so I didn't know who he was, and I was 5, so let's be real. I don't have perfect recall, but I just remember that all the excitement there was around me that was being generated by this person playing a guitar. I mean, I don't know what song he was playing. I don't know, everything, but I just know that I was surrounded by all these people who were really motivated, and so I think that planted the seed for that. But anyway, we had moved out there to Lubbock, to West Texas, far away from both my parents' families, because my dad really didn't want a lot of interference from family stuff. So we were, and Lubbock, if you don't know, is a very pretty much insular place. It's remote. My dad used to like to say it's right in the middle of fishing country. It's just 300 miles in any direction, And so I think that's where it got started. And of course, I'm coming of age, 13, when the Beatles are releasing their music, and young people are now starting to get involved in music. And when I was 13, all my buddies and I, we went out and got guitar lessons, and started buying guitars and making combos and bands and playing. And I was never never really that involved in it, but I know I love music. Music was a thing. We would sit around at night and listen to KOMA out of Oklahoma City, or we would listen to one of the X's out of Mexico, broadcasting, just to be able to hear some of the rock and roll music that was out there, because Lubbock was predominantly agricultural and a lot of country music. So, fast forward a few years, when I was 16, I think my dad died. And I think this is pertinent to what we're getting at here. And so he died of a heart attack at 37, which was way too young. And you have to ask yourself, what must he have done to himself to make him die at 37? Well, he had lifestyle habits that weren't conducive, but just about every adult male in the country had those habits of smoking and, not being physically active. Nobody really was running. Nobody was jogging. And back then, medicine was not advanced enough to be able to do something with somebody who had coronary heart disease. But anyway, so he passed, and then we met with his cardiologist, who informed us that his death was largely due to genetics, and that those were likely passed along. So from the age of 16 forward, from that moment forward, I lived with this thought that life's not going to be that long. And so, when you think about starting to do something, you'd be thinking about, well, I'm not going to have much time to do that or carry that forward. So, but then when I hit that magic age of 38 and then began to age more, I've been thinking, well, all the things that I hesitated to do previously because of this fear of an early death. You know, when I hit 70, I used to think I was going to die young until I hit 70, and I thought, well, maybe I'm not going to die young. And so I think that once that subsided, that whole mindset of not living a long life passed, then I started to embrace doing things I'd never done before. When I was 34, started playing soccer. I'd never played soccer before.
Oh my gosh!
And running. I ran 30 miles a week for years, and so anyway, I think that was that. To get back to it, that whole, all of that played into why I started wanting to play music. Plus, most musicians, right, go and embrace this life of making art and don't really get really engrossed in making families and making stable homes and doing that kind of thing. And I was already heavily into that. And so you really had to get to a point to where you'd accomplished that, and your kids and your family was secure, and your kids were out of the house. And now, what are you going to do with yourself? And so I think all that played into why at that age I started getting involved. And I could have started earlier, but it took something like watching the travesty of Katrina and New Orleans unfold before your eyes to try to really spur you forward, to try to memorialize that process.
That's that all makes so much sense. I'm curious. You mentioned when you were growing up that you and your buddies would go and get guitars. What was how did you come across your first guitar, and how did you learn how to play?
There was a really interesting gentleman in Lubbock named Swinford, and he had a music school, and he had a guitar classes, and we formed a band. Now, none of us knew how to play an instrument, but we formed a band, and we all went to Mr. Swinford, and we all started taking lessons. And part of that was you rented a guitar for him, an Epiphone guitar. And so we were all rented guitars, and then we were over at my house one evening, the band, and we decided, well, it's quit raining. Let's go out on the back patio and play out there. And we're all barefooted. And, of course, we plug in, and the first thing I start doing is vibrating as I'm being electrocuted by this guitar. And so I throw it to I said, "Here, Louie." And I threw this at my friend, and he dropped it and broke the head off of it.
Oh, my God.
And that's how I bought my first guitar. But it was broken. He couldn't play it. So after that, I said, well, maybe I'm not in the band. So anyway, that's the first guitar. And then
wait. So what happened with Swinford? How did that go from that breaking that way to then telling, because you were renting this, right?
Yeah, I had to take it back and say, I broke your guitar. And he said, well, that'll be $80.
Oh my God.
And $80 back then was real dollars, was real $80. It's like, it was a lot of money. And my dad, came up with the money, but I had to work it off at his restaurant, So anyway, I thought this music business is expensive. I don't know if I can afford it.
What kind of Epiphone was it? What model was it?
Gosh, I don't remember. This was 1964. And so it was just it was a basic Epiphone. It was a basic kind of Fender knockoff. But it wouldn't be a collector's item. Let's put it that way.
So So your dad had a restaurant. So you
Yeah.
worked off that $80 at working in his restaurant. What was the restaurant called?
It was called the Country Kitchen. He had his started selling restaurant equipment and supplies on a route through eastern New Mexico and West Texas. He would leave every Monday with his truck and go drive around. And then he started selling equipment. And then he decided that he wanted to be in the business himself. So he raised the money and built a little cafe. That did well. He sold it. And then he built a barbecue joint on the east side of Lubbock, which was ethnic. And the barbecue joint did well. So they went back over to the more affluent side of town and built a steakhouse and a barbecue joint. And it was well locked and very successful. And but I'd wind up, bussing tables on the weekends.
So you pay the guitar off, and then what was your next instrument that you got? Or did you rent again from Swinford, or how did that work? I'm so curious about this.
I didn't pursue music anymore for a while after that. First I discovered girls and football. I had horses, and I went as soon as I was neglecting the horses, they got sold. And so now I'm down to girls and football. And girls aren't very interested in me, so now I'm down to football. And then I get hurt, and now I'm down to, nothing.
Well, what happened with football? How did you get hurt?
I got a shoulder injury and didn't play, and then I lost interest in it. It was just, it was just one of those things where I just fell out. Out there in West Texas, football is a religion, and everybody, all my friends, all my buddies, virtually all of them were playing football. And so to be part of that group that played football, and I wasn't bad at it at all, but I wasn't very big either. So my best friend who played next to me was 6'2" and weighed 240, and I think I was 5'6" and 160. And he wound up going to UT and on a scholarship, and I wound up watching him.
Okay. So can you walk me through from that moment where then you got distracted? Then how many years passed till you got your first instrument? Well,
it wasn't, I guess I was about maybe 18. My mother came home with an old airline, Sears and Roebuck, not a Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward's.
Oh, okay.
Guitar,
the
kind of a cheap, kind of arch top. Didn't have the sound hole, it had the F holes, and it was black and white, and it was really not very good, but it was enough for me to sit and noodle on for hours and hours at a time. And that was my guitar until I left to go to college. And while I was in college, I made enough money to go out and buy a Yamaha guitar from the music store that I could make payments on, and paid it off. And then
wow.
And then it got stolen. And it was, I was probably another 20 years before I had another guitar.
Oh my gosh. Hold on a second. So what was the scenario? What were the circumstances that it got stolen?
I was moving, and I had all my stuff in my car, and there's a girl that I knew who was trying to move too. So I said, well, here, let me help. I'll put my stuff in your apartment, and we'll take your stuff, and I'll move it, and then I'll come back and get mine. And when I came back to get mine, nothing was there, and it included all my clothes.
Oh my God.
And my guitar. And there was nothing left. I was like going, I'm going to need clothes.
Oh
so
gosh.
The guitar wasn't at the top of the list of things I was missing.
Oh my gosh. And then, so you said then 20 years passed from when that guitar was stolen. 20 years passed till you got your next guitar.
Right. And I went out and bought a $100 classical guitar and began noodling on it. I'd just gone through a divorce, and I said, well, I'm going to need some some therapy here, and I can't afford all the whiskey I'd drink, so I'll just get $100 guitar and we'll call it even.
So I'm curious because I'm not sure why, but your song, whatever level of synesthesia that I have, music and song it's very tactile to me, but I'm able to recognize patterns.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why, but I get the same feeling when I listen to you perform and sing your songs that I do when I hear this singer-songwriter Colin Hay, the lead singer of Men at Work, sing. I was able to see him play acoustically, but there's this I'm not sure if I can describe it. It's this it's almost like you unlock you have your voice, you have the lyrics, you have the guitar, and that unlocks this combination to where everything lines up, and it's this portal. Almost feels to me like a time machine, but the people who are listening to you, like I sing Rusted the hook to Rusted Things a couple times a day ever since I first heard it, right? And there's something about that song where, and I want to talk to you later about the lyrics for that song, that I feel like that's my goal as a songwriter, is to be able to paint a picture to where like you can smell the paint on the canvas. Like I can see the mailbox that hasn't been fixed since '98, right? And I know you've told a story on your Substack, which I have other questions about how I believe it was for that song that you wrote while you were driving, right?
Right.
So, I want to kind of jump around with this question. What I'm so curious to know, because for those of you listening, Roger essentially composed the entire song in his head. So what I would like to ask you, since you had these huge leaps of time where you didn't have an instrument or a way to record, were you consciously, were you writing songs from when you first started, like, or even before you had your first guitar from Swinford?
Yeah, I think probably not before I bought that, but I think in that interval and even beyond that, I think I do think lyrically. I mean, I do think about things lyrically, like the Buddy Holly thing. Uh-huh. It's like my memory is this visualization of activity. You know, I mean, I have these. It's almost like a picture that I have a photograph of that, but I don't. So I think my memory is almost photographic, if that makes sense. So when I'm thinking about it or writing, I'm not really trying to emote, feelings. I'm really trying to paint or create a picture of what it is I'm doing. Even in that last song, the Anyone But Me, where we're talking about, I'm seeing the red cape, and I'm seeing the mask, and I'm seeing pictures of the Babe and Mickey Mantle and my hero Yogi Berra.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let me, and I really feel I have so many questions. Okay. I feel I'm just going to be jumping around. So I'm going to try to stay somewhat linear. So what was, when you got that $100 classical, can you tell me where you were in your life and then how you found that guitar?
Yeah, like I said, I just had a coming out of a relationship, and found myself kind of rudderless, and so I thought I need an anchor here. I need something that I can hold on to and hold. And so I went down to the music store and, I can't remember which one, but I said, "What's your cheapest guitar?" And they brought it out, and I said, "How much is it?" And they said, $100. I said, "Okay, I'll take that," because it had strings, and it didn't need to be anything elaborate, but it was enough for me to go and just noodle on, which is what I did with that old airline guitar I told you about. I would just sit in there. I never played a song. I would just play notes, and just notes after note after note, and just play and just kind of imagine songs, but never really played a song.
If you could just oblige me, could you, because Roger, and I'd love if you could explain the story of this guitar that you brought to the studio, but could you just play just the your finger picking style for Rusted Things? Just I'd like people to hear that, because I have some questions about that as well.
Yeah. So, it's pertinent to this, is that when I started buying these guitars and wanting to play out and writing songs and wanted to play the songs, try my hand at playing them out, I wasn't very good. But I found this guy through another friend who was a guitar teacher, and his whole thing is finger picking. Everything and it was all based upon Earl Scruggs finger picking routines. So that helped. That's where that emanated from. But he learned to use the metronome here, his thumb.
Okay.
And then everything else just evolves off that. I don't think about the patterns. And he would teach me patterns, thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. Just the Travis picking or the Earl Scruggs picking. But after a while, you get the metronome going, and then it has to become mindless almost. But that's when I had the idea for the song. That's where I had to have a melody that wasn't just the I try to avoid
I'm laughing because I play that way a lot.
Music's finite. There's only 8 notes, right? And so it's not like there's endless combinations of melodies that you can come up with that nobody's thinking. And when I go to a songwriting retreat, Crooked Crow, which is really, really incredible place to go to. But, one of the themes out of that is there's nothing that comes directly from the mouth of God. It's even Bob Dylan stole his name. It's and that's why the crow theme is that crows steal things.
Okay.
And so anyway.
And just for you, since we're going to describe this, Roger, the case that he brought this guitar in is just replete with all these beautiful stickers, and there is one from the what is it called?
Crooked Crow.
Crooked Crow. But can you tell me what the name of this guitar?
Yeah, I call this guitar. I have several guitars, as you do, but I give them names. Because B.B. King always called this guitar Lucille, but I give them names. And this one, the person, and I believe guitars. All my guitars have personalities. This one is called Aunt Lola. Most people up north would say Aunt Lola, but it's Aunt Lola because that's what we called her, and she was my aunt, and she was a second mother to me, and she was just off the wall crazy and always singing in this high voice and brassy, and she would scream if you'd come with your hands cupped like you had a bug. She would start screaming, and she was loud and brassy and sassy, and so this is named after her. I've got others, got Grandma, which is a 1942 018 Martin. I've got others that have other names, but because of their personality, it's like, are they? This one, and I don't know about you. I know you've got several guitars here, but this is the one I grab every time. It's just like, knowing where your spot is.
Yep.
There's that one guitar that if you had all of them lined up, this is the one I'd grab every time. I go play the others because it's important to play guitars. They shouldn't just sit around.
Right.
But anyway, so that's Aunt Lola, and we shared a birthday, by the way. Anyway, she was a remarkable human being, and if you go to the encyclopedia and you look up the term "salt of the earth," her picture's going to be there. So anyway, but that's why I've done that with this guitar, and it's nothing special. It's a nice guitar for certain, but it's serviceable, it's reliable, and I guess it's over 40 years old now, so it's almost of age.
I just think that's just a beautiful tribute to your aunt. I think that's really cool. You mentioned something that we were talking about in the pre-interview in the kitchen about finding your spot. Can you expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah, that was, and we were in the context of that. We were talking about how we both wound up in Austin, and back in college in the early '70s, I read as part of a sociology course. I read A Yaqui Way of Knowledge, which was written by Carlos Castaneda, and it was about a curandera down in northern Mexico named Don Juan, and Castaneda's time he spent with him, I guess, as a sociology in research and trying to understand his ways, and anyway, from the book, he talked about how you talked about finding your spot, and Castaneda said, "Well, how do you find your spot?" He said, "Well, let me show you." And they were in this little cabin, and they cleared the room, and he told him to lay down and roll around, and just roll every direction possible, and keep rolling and rolling until he found his spot. And he said he kept rolling, and it went on for hours, until finally he woke up. And Don Juan sitting over in the corner, and he goes, "Well, darn, I didn't find my spot." He goes, "Yeah, you did."
Oh, wow.
And so when I first started coming down to Austin, was just coming down to listen to music, and then I met some folks here, and I would come down every weekend from Arlington, Fort Worth, where I was working in radio, and I would come down here every weekend rather than stay in Dallas or Fort Worth, because this was a much more chill place to be back in 1974, 75, and 76. And anyway, but I noticed that when I would be driving down, as soon as I got past Georgetown, my shoulders dropped. I quit worrying about Monday. I didn't, it was just I just knew that this was my spot, and I would wind up here someday. And it took a year or two, but I finally did. I've been here almost 50 years, so.
I think that's I love that. I've never heard that story before about rolling around, and then waking up. That's really that's such a beautiful way to find your spot. Can you tell me? I know you and I spoke about this earlier. Can you tell me about that? That show you went to, I think it was one of the times when you were first visiting here.
Oh yeah, it was my very my very first trip here, and it was a buddy of mine that I'd gone to high school with, and I was still living in Arlington. And I said, "Let's go down and check out Austin. And we got down there, and we got down here, and we went directly to the Armadillo World headquarters, which, you know, was a legendary place to be. And we saw that Greasy Wheels was playing there that night, and I knew Greasy Wheels because they used to come to Lubbock and play in the Cotton Club, which was a kind of a legendary place of its own out in Lubbock. And I said, let's go hear Greasy Wheels because they're really good. And we did. We had our long neck and, you know, sat at the bar and listened to Greasy Wheels. And my friend said, let's go find someplace else. And I said, well, we've paid our cover. Let's wait to see who the Springsteen guy is. And I went, oh my God. I had never heard any music like that ever. I mean, there were good bands and, you know, stuff, but nothing that ever just made your hair stand up and had that kind of power and energy to it that was just amazing. This was 1974, so Bruce Springsteen hadn't found his real audience yet, and this was the first tour of the E Street Band. And of course, I just read today that he just ended this last tour he did and grossed $700 million. Oh
my gosh!
You know,
wow.
So it's but anyway, that, you know, it just goes to show that, you know, sometimes you just discover things that, you know, you wouldn't have found otherwise. You know, I would have learned who he was later when at the radio station, but. Man, that was pretty remarkable. And it just solidified that, yeah, I need to live in Austin.
So you had mentioned, you'd mentioned earlier that you have experience writing about inanimate objects. Could you share about your career in radio? I'm so curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, that was what my friend who I worked with in radio, and I like to call cosmonicity. And I had
cosmonicity.
Cosmonicity.
Okay.
And we would get altered and have these long, deep conversations. And one of them was about cosmonicity and coincidence. And if you think about how we refer to something, oh, that's coincidence. But coincidence means everything is coincidental. Everything is happening at once. And time is a made-up thing. But anyway, I had worked on the freight docks for several months and just got burned out, just moving heavy boxes and stuff around. And I quit and I moved to Rio Doce, New Mexico here again, it's one of these little respites where I went out to Rio Doce for a month. And after being there, I didn't feel comfortable. I said, I can't stay here. And I just packed up everything and I drove directly back to Fort Worth, to my mom's house. I cut off my hair, I shaved my beard, and I immediately found the studio for this radio station in Arlington that I liked listening to while I was living here. And I walked in and I said, hey, they said, can we help you? And I said, yeah, I'm looking for a job. And they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, what do you need? And they said, well, can you sell? And I said, well, sure, why not? And so I talked to the sales manager. He hired me and I started selling radio time spots. And I think the first month I made $30. But the next month, I learned fast. The next month, I made $3,000.
Oh my gosh!
And back then it was a lot of money. And I said, I might be okay at this. But the way we did it back then was this was a little bitty hippie radio station. It was the second progressive FM station on the air in the United States.
Wow!
After KSAN, and it had been a 50,000 watt mono station in this little town called Cleburne. And a guy bought it, made it 100,000 watts. And anyway, but we're still this hippie radio station. And so we would go out and sell radio time. And then we would write the spots. We would write the commercials. And I'd never written commercials, I had this friend with my cosmonistic friend, this discussion with my cosmonistic friend, Ken Bateman, and we, he had been an advertising major at Texas Tech, and I had been too. And he explained to me how you write for radio and how you made it work. And it was pretty creative because, think about radio commercial. It's just air, right? You have to make someone see things. So I think it kind of conditioned how I write songs. But we could be as creative as we wanted to because we were a hippie radio station and nobody was worried about, how formal it was. So we could make up commercials for apartments by making a conversation between two people about one of them's talking and said, I have to move because they say my goldfish is swimming too loud. and of course, it was all written for the audience. It wasn't really written for the advertiser. It was written for the audience. And being an old hippie radio station, you have to assume that most of your listeners first, they're in their car, and secondly, they're all altered to some extent. So you tried to make them as entertaining as possible. And that we had a poor signal in Dallas, and so that we couldn't use what they call Arbitron numbers to justify our rate, but people started advertising with us, so we would write their commercials.
Wow.
And then they would take our commercials and run them on other stations.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So anyway, it's great. It was a great experience. I can't think of a better, but it was cosmonistic. I just kind of walked. I said, I think I'll go to work over there. And I went to work over there.
Uh-huh. I think for anybody who's listening who is in you have a job that is different than what you would like to be doing for your full time. I think that's a really perfect example of how something you jumped into, both feet, and it was something that, writing a ad copy or a commercial about a funny commercial that's actually going to, in a non-cheesy way, make people laugh, because everybody can relate to, if you've lived in an apartment, to having, a noise infraction for something as wild as your goldfish swimming too loudly. That it seems like you were exercising that same part of your brain that you write songs from.
I think that, in hindsight, I think that's true.
Uh-huh.
And it was on demand. It was prompt, right? It was a prompt.
Wow.
It wasn't like, hey, what do you feel like writing today? It was like, no, I need you to write a song about motorcycles today, or a concert, for Boz Scaggs or somebody like that. So it was like I say, it was cosmonicity, because I can't think of anybody having a better gig than that one. Anybody says, "Oh, I had a great job," I would just say, "No, I had a great job." It was free concerts. It was, it was great.
While you were doing that, were you did you have any guitar at the time, or was this in between guitars?
No, I didn't have any. I didn't make any music at all.
Were you interacting with a lot of these musicians?
Oh,
when you
yeah.
were at the concerts?
It was the Willie Wiley Walker era, right? It was. I was talking to Willie Nelson and Jerry Jeff Walker, and they were stars, but they weren't anywhere on that level. Ray Wiley Walker, or Ray Wiley Hubbard, he and I have had discussions about those days when he would come in. David Allen Coe walked in off the street. His bus. We had a little station. There's a little building. His bus took up the whole parking lot. He walked in off the street and said, "I hear you let people make music on your radio station."
Oh my God!
And I said, well, let me get the program director. And Ken came out and said, well, who are you? He said, David Allan Coe.
Uh-huh.
And he played the absolute best version of Desperado's Waiting for a Train you've ever heard in your life.
Oh, my gosh.
And, I mean, so yeah, there was lots of interaction. You know, Michael Murphy would show up at the station at midnight, want to play his banjo on the air.
Uh-huh.
It was a really pretty interesting time, and it was pretty laid back, and none of these guys had really shot through it was like Bruce Springsteen. Back then, he could barely draw 2,000 people to a concert in Moody Coliseum in Dallas.
Roger, do you think things were, because things are always changing and evolving, but I think a lot of times certain things stay the same. Do you feel it was different than you told me a story, and I think it's when we were setting up the mics, about how you just walked up to Taj Mahal to ask if it would be okay if you bootlegged his show. Right? I'm trying to think about that happening nowadays, right? Where you'd have to get through, I don't know how many levels of security at, any Live Nation or Ticketmaster event. What was... But then I ask myself, like, but is it, because we're still the same as humans, like, I'm curious, do you think you would be able to do that today? Or what was that like, being able to have such access where you could actually ask, like, hey, are you cool if I boot? And could you please tell the story? It's fascinating. And then I'm just curious to hear your reflections on that.
Well, I knew the engineer, and I said, and I had a portable stereo, a really nice broadcast quality portable cassette recorder, and I went to the venue was a client of mine that I wrote ads for and sold time to, and I went, and I knew the engineer, and I went to the engineer and I said, what do you think the chances of me being able to plug into the soundboard tonight and record this show? Uh-huh. And a lot of these shows, by the way, we were doing something nobody else did to this little station. We were broadcasting the shows. If they were sold out, then we would get permission and we would broadcast them live.
Oh my gosh!
And so he said, "Well, I don't know. Why don't you ask him?" And Taj was up there by the stage, and I walked up and said, "Hey, Taj," I introduced myself and I said, "I'm with this radio station. Do you think I could record this show tonight?" He said, "Oh, yeah, sure. Just get your sound guy to wire you up." And I said, "Okay, thank you."
Oh my goodness.
Well, you'd ask permission, and we met. I mean, it's like meeting Jimmy Buffett, back when Jimmy Buffett was just a laid back guy. He wasn't all this stuff. And but today's different, when you're paying $1,500 a ticket to see someone at Moody, or I think Paul McCartney's going to play in Albuquerque, and I looked at just in an amphitheater, and I think the places on the lawn are $1,600.
Oh my gosh!
And I go, it's like,
wow.
I look at it and I go, it's just silly. We got too much money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When artists can do that. Plus, look at what it costs him to stage a show.
Yeah.
They probably cost him a lot of money. And so I just think it's the NeWorlDeli is just as entertaining, can provide just as much entertainment as a McCartney show. I mean, look at it. I mean, 69 years ago, I went to a Buddy Holly show. Mm-hmm. And while I don't remember the songs or what he played, the experience stays with you. And so It's like, sometimes you go places and you take a lot of pictures, right? Mm-hmm. Some places you just go and experience it and just walk away with the experience, because the pictures don't necessarily, enhance that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the same way with music sometimes. So, a couple of things I was going to mention. One is that we're talking about the guitar and finger picking. I heard an interview with Ray Wiley where he said that he didn't start really writing songs till he was 43, and he took guitar lessons.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
And then I'm also remembered there's a great audiobook by Malcolm Gladwell
Mm-hmm.
on the career of Paul Simon.
Really?
With lots of interviews with Paul Simon, really, really in-depth interviews with him, where he goes into great detail. But as an aside, he talks about how Paul Simon continued to get better and better as he got older.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells the story of how Cezanne, I think, didn't really start selling paintings or being known till he was 60s.
Mm.
And that the Stones were done with creating music when they're 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it's so I think in terms of when you start to do stuff, or when you what point in your life you create things, it's just up to you. It's like, I don't think you're too old to do stuff. You can really reinvent yourself and really invigorate yourself.
Well, you know, because I'm a pretty avid TikToker, and I see, you know, the way the algorithm works for me is that, because I follow a lot of different musicians or singer-songwriters, and I see a lot of singer-songwriters in their mid-30s where they apologize, where they almost feel like, oh, I'm sorry, this is embarrassing that I'm so old and I'm doing this. And I see people, you know, like myself, I'm a Gen Xer. I just turned 50, and I understand where that fear originates, because I remember when I was a kid, for me, like old what's the right word? Not vintage, but like classic, not even classic rock, earlier than that, would be like Buddy Holly, right? Growing up in the early 80s. Now realizing that music, the same distance as music that would be in the 90s for people that are listening today, it's a mind-blowing thing today. And the reason why I love stories like, say, that what Paul Simon mentioned in that interview is you have proof that no. I think Colonel Sanders started when he was in his 70s. Grandma Moses has painting in her 80s or 90s. That we all have our different timeline, and it's something that when I watch these people that are 32 and say, "Oh, I'm so old to be doing this," it's like somebody said something, or I heard something or read something that said that it's always the right time to start. And I always think that's so true, because it happens when, or you're doing. Do you feel that a person is doing what they need to be doing at the right time?
Yeah, because first off, time is a construct, right? And we think about being too old, or being, we think about when it's happening in relation to something that's just made up. Just, it's happening today, right? And if you think about my buddy Ken Bateman, who passed away a couple of years ago, that everything is coincidence. It's like it's just all happening right now. It's like, we create time in order to separate things out, to create space between them, right? And space them out so that we can then examine them and look at them. But really, so I know this sounds all metaphysical and stuff, but I think you have to look at it that way. I mean, it's like I probably hurt myself tremendously by being worried about dying young for so long, right? I mean, I'm so worried about dying I didn't live, maybe. And I have no regrets, and like one of my heroes, Satchel Paige, said, "Don't look back. Somebody might be gaining on you."
That's fantastic. So you're having this, and that's I always like to go on those websites like, what was $3,000 in 1981, or just to get the idea for the relative comparison. So you go, your first week you make $30, then you make $3,000, and you're doing these really cool, fun commercials that other stations are playing. It's really interesting hearing you say that, because I remember sometimes when I would take road trips, that I would hear the same commercial, the same voices, and I never understood how that happened. But you just helped me understand that was then sold, I guess, to another radio station. How do we go from that, so where you're having this successful career in radio, to then where and when do you write your first song? Was it on that classical, that $100 classical?
No, it wasn't. It was on an old Epiphone that I'd bought for my daughter, and I hadn't given it to her yet. So she was about to turn 16. I bought this old Epiphone off of Craigslist, I think, and I brought it home. And the action was, the neck was crap, and the action was bad, but it was cheap. It's like, well, I'm not going to buy her a Collins until she's proven that she wants it. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote it on that. But that, it was like, well, that's, I'm trying to remember when Katrina was, but it was probably 2005.
Yeah.
In August of 2005.
Uh-huh.
And so, it just, that song took probably 3 months to write, because everything was evolving. You were finding, mm-hmm. New stuff was coming out, and this was happening, and you'd be going, no way. That's got to fit in there somewhere.
Could you play it?
Sure. Packed your bags and got behind the wheel of your Lexus or your Oldsmobile. What did you leave in the waters upon your train? And you hit the road with a storm bearing down. Did you have your daddy's watch? Did you have your mama's wedding gown? What did you leave for the waters upon your train? When you finally stopped off in Lafayette, did you think about your neighbors? Did you remember your pet? What did you leave for the waters upon your train? New Orleans is drowning tonight. The levee broken, but the spirit's alive. New Orleans is drowning tonight. The body dying, but the soul survives. Well, about 5 o'clock, the power went out. I could see the water rising and hear my neighbors shout. From the windows, the doors, the attics, and the roofs. This ain't no Betsy, you can bet your boots. The 50,000 souls in the Superdome. The house of the saints, but the saints ain't home. People crying mercy, people crying out in vain. A heck of a job, Brownie, let's get back on that plane. New Orleans is drowning tonight. The levee broken, but the spirit's alive. New Orleans is drowning tonight. The body dying, but the soul survives. Well, when you returned to the White House lawn, did the people in the lower nine know you were gone? What did you leave in the waters upon your train? When you were trying on your new shoes, had you seen the report? Had you heard the news? What did you leave in the waters upon your train? When you heard New Orleans was hurt, did you call up your old friends at Halliburton? What did you leave in the waters upon your train? New Orleans is drowning tonight, the levee broken but the spirit's alive. New Orleans is drowning tonight, the body dying but the soul survives. Now people pointing fingers and they're sorting out the blame. They patched all the holes in Lake Pontchartrain. They stacked up the trash 6 feet high, hauled off the bodies, dead and alive. Well, they cleaned up the quarter and they had a parade. All the politicians were playing charades. People feeling sorry, people got pity for all the poor folk down in Chocolate City. New Orleans is drowning tonight, the levee broken but the spirit's alive. New Orleans is drowning tonight, the body dying but the soul survives. Well, there was a house in New Orleans, but it's gone.
Roger, that's incredible. What's the name of that song?
Pontchartrain.
Pontchartrain. See, I hear that and it just inspires me just to improve my craft as a songwriter. Just your rhymes are so smart, and there are so many turns and surprises. That's what I was thinking about. What I most like about your songwriting is that it has for me so many surprises as a listener that catch me off guard, that I'm not. Or a turn of a phrase. Thank you for playing that. So if I can ask, how old were you when you wrote that song?
Let's see, I was 55.
55, okay.
2006, 2005, 54, 50, it was in my 50s. And I didn't know enough, I didn't know enough musically. That's the house of the House of the Rising Sun is basically the chord progression with that little, it's like kind of like a tragedy that happens in 4 acts. There's 4 different, there's 2 distinct melody parts, but I didn't know enough to write. One of my friends from Lubbock, David Halley, who's written lots of songs done really well. And I had him listen to it, and he goes, "Oh, that's just too confusing." And I go, "Oh, well, I'm not going to rewrite it." It's like I think sometimes you're better when you don't know what you're doing. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of songwriters, trying to figure out how should I write this, or what's about that. And this friend of mine who lives up at Morton Grove, Illinois, Mark Ambrose, who used to sleep on Townes Van Zant's couch, he said, "Roger," he said, "nobody invites you to be a songwriter." He said, "just go write things. Don't try to figure out from somebody else how things are written. So just go and make stuff." And so I think you fall into the trap sometimes of trying to make something that somebody's going to respond to in a certain way. And in advertising, you have to do that. You're looking for a specific response, right? You're looking for someone to react to what you're doing and to respond in a certain way. And I think when you're making art, you're just drawing stuff and you're writing stuff, and I looked at all kinds of books. I listened to Jeff Tweedy talk about writing songs, and I listened to that audio book, which is great. It's called Miracle and Wonder, about Paul Simon. It's wonderful, and I didn't know any more when I walked away from there. Somebody asked me online the other day, said, "What do you guys do when you hit a block and nothing's coming out?" And I said, "Then I go listen." Mm-hmm. When you're not writing, you should be listening. And so the advertising career obviously shows through, because you're trying to make things come out a certain way. And sometimes, but this first song I ever written, and I didn't know enough about melodies to come up with any other melody than that one. And it just seemed to fit, and there's so much input to it. And to me, this was really just regurgitating things I was seeing. I mean, some of this comes from the Spike Lee joint he did about Katrina, where he has this place where he's watching all these reporters watch Condoleezza Rice try on new shoes on Madison Avenue in New York while this is going on in New Orleans. And so little things like that just jump into your head, and you just say, well, how do I fit that in there? So
I think that's so interesting, because where feedback, first feedback you got was like, this is too confusing. Yeah, like, that's just it.
I don't get it. And here's the way I am. It's like, even with a client, they go, well, I don't like that. You need to do this. And I go, well, I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing it again. You paid me to do what I thought was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Wow.
If you tell me that you don't like it and I got to go do it again, then you're accusing me of not doing my best work. And part of this is laziness. I did that. I didn't want to think about it anymore. It hurt my head to think about. To go back and rewrite that would never have happened. I would have just thrown it in a trash can.
So how do we get from that to, had you ever performed live? Had you ever sung and played guitar in front of an audience?
No.
Walk me through.
Before that?
Yeah. What was that journey to get there?
I joined Austin's songwriters group.
Okay.
Which was this clever idea. And it was a group of people who were kind of like me, just kind of novice songwriters, right? Mm-hmm. Who didn't really, nobody in there knew any more about songwriting than anybody else, And then I would go to their sessions and listen. And then every Friday night they had in their meeting place, they had a round. They would let everybody show up playing rounds of 3 on the stage. Mm-hmm. And I started doing that, and it was nerve-wracking and awful. Before that, in my practice I gravitated from advertising to marketing, which is significantly different. And I would have to present, research findings or campaigns or something to large groups of people, and that would be nerve-wracking. I would sweat bullets, until you got up and, and realized that nobody really cared about what you were telling them. And so I got comfortable, and I could get up and talk to a group of people, but I couldn't get up and, it's like, I think probably after a while I'd get up and say, does everybody here feel as naked as me? So, and it's still nerve wracking. I mean, even to play a song in this setting was a little bit intimidating, but it felt more comfortable than if I'm staring out at a bunch of people staring back. The nice thing about NeWorlDeli is that I'm staring out at the same people that I was staring at last week.
Shout out to the amazing NeWorlDeli and all the cool people that we get to see there. So what was your first live performance like, and where was it? What did you play?
Well, it was on those stages, and I played that song. I mean, I only had. I'll tell you what it was. ASG had a songwriter contest, and I came and I brought that song and I played it, and they went, "Wow, that's good. What else you got?" I don't have another song. Said, oh, well, that's too bad because you have to submit 3 songs in order to qualify. And I go, well, okay, I'm out. The first time where I got comfortable was you have to figure out how to prepare for it. But ASG had a night at the Cactus Cafe, and I got to play 3 of my songs in the round on stage at the Cactus, which I'm sure you've been to.
No, haven't been there yet.
Oh, it's a magic place. I mean, everybody's played there. Towns Van Sant, and it's just it's historic in terms of the number of people played there. So getting to play there was pretty intimidating, but it happened. My daughter was in the audience, and and some friends from college, as a matter of fact, Lubbock, showed up, and the nice thing about it was that the lights, it's a real stage, right? So the lights don't let you really make eye contact with the audience.
Okay.
So that really kind of created it's like the old honky tonks. I'm behind the chicken wire. They can't hit me with the beer bottle.
And how did you feel afterwards when you finished your performance at the Cactus Cafe?
I was really comfortable with it. I was really okay. I did this, and it came off, and it was good. And now, how fast can I get out of here?
So that's. And what kind of a time span are we talking about from when you wrote? And I'm sorry, it was called On Lake Pontchartrain?
It's called Pontchartrain.
Pontchartrain. How long from after you wrote that to when you performed at the Cactus Cafe?
I'd say a couple of years, maybe a year or 2. By then I had more songs, so I was able to perform them as well.
I just love that you were putting yourself out there. I see so many correlations, and I've never thought about it before, as far as giving a presentation for marketing clients, presenting data, being essentially on stage. And you said something interesting about how they're not really listening, but you feel so naked up on stage. And we were talking earlier about how nerves and things like that before you play, and about how when you're playing, that people are thinking about the song they're going to play and make sure they get it right and don't forget the words, etc., etc. And it's sometimes I wonder how present we are, or how people are when you're bearing your soul and sharing all these secrets and telling, essentially reading your diary, or the result of years of therapy, and someone is knee deep into a chicken sandwich, or where I ask myself, like, why was I so nervous? He's not even listening.
It's like you said, if you forget the words, how would they know? Right. That's why I don't do covers, because right, if I forget the words, everybody's going to know. But if I'm running my song and the words don't come out, they'll go, "Oh, that's great. He made up a new word."
That's so. I think it's so awesome and so truly inspiring for anybody that's listening to this. Like, go for it. Like, now is the time, because I wanted a quick talk about your performing with, and your friendship with Stuart Michael Burns. I was fortunate enough to see you perform your version of Eli at the Stuart Michael Burns tribute concert at the NeWorlDeli a couple weeks ago. And you read a poem before that called "The Ghost of Stuart Burns." That's your work, correct? Right. I just wanna read this for y'all. The ghost of Stuart Burns sits a stool to my right. He just finished grace. He'll be here all night. He chuckles, smiles with his eyes, makes us all think he's taken by surprise. The ghost of Stuart Burns turns to me, asks, "What you got?" "Nothing good as that," is my only thought. Then he leans over, whispers in my ear, says to me, "Show them why you're here. We're all here for you, Stuart Michael Burns. We'd gladly skip our turn to hear you play again, to shake your hand, have you as a friend. How we miss your stories about the places you've seen, and oh, how we miss the sound of that old D18. Enjoy your lunch, tip the crew. Let the artist know you're happy when the song is through. When there's a song on the floor, take your talking out the door. When it comes to peace, don't give up the fight. The ghost of Stuart Burns is here with us tonight." And I heard you, I believe you began your performance with the reading of that poem. And I never met Stuart, but I feel that on some plane I have, through these vibrant stories. And hearing you read that poem gave me chills, because it was such almost like a credo of how to treat your fellow humans. And it's in the context of performance, but the whole idea of, hey, that's cool if you guys are going to have a chat, but if there's somebody, performing, you can take the chat outside. But saying it in the way you wrote that was in such a cool honorific way. I don't know if I'm using that word the right way, to honor who he was, for someone who never got to meet him. And this was someone you guys performed a lot together. Is that correct?
Yeah. Stuart was a consummate troubadour. Uh-huh. He'd been all over the world playing. He was 79. He had started in the East Village at the same time as Bobby was running around, Bobby Dylan. So he was 79 years old. He's from Long Island. He had started, there in New York, in the Village, in the real folk scare, as another friend would say, in that real folk scare era. And then he had continued to not only, he had gotten a family, and he had gotten, he had been still tried to move around and get around every place. But on stage, his presence was, he just commanded. His stage presence was amazing, right? And he knew his songs were good. He didn't have any lack of confidence about his songs or his performance. But he would have this shy little smile, like he would just chuckle when he was through, because he said, "Oh, that worked." And being on stage with him was at once intimidating, but also would relax you, right? Because he asked you to be there.
Yeah.
First time I played with him was at ASG, and he was on a stool to my right, and he played, and I went, "Oh my God, this isn't one of us, pluckers." This guy, great song. I mean, it was so well put together. I said, and it sounded familiar. I said, "Do you know Ramblin' Jack Elliott? Do you know Ramblin' Jack Elliott?" He said, "No, but my kids go to school with his kids out in L.A. My grandkids go to school with his grandkids out in L.A. I go, holy crap, So he had that, and he had that air about him, and he could tell stories, and he talked. He wrote. He was on the Caribbean islands for a while, and but it was just as nice and personable as you could be, except if you were talking
while someone was singing, right? And he was a force. Everybody admired. If he picked up one of your songs and did it, man, that was a testament, you know. And there's 3 or 4 songwriters I know that weren't there the other night who he's done their songs, and he did one of mine, but he did it as a 12-bar blues, and I thought, and it worked. I would have never thought to do that, but anyway.
Which song?
It's called the Marcia song.
The Marcia song?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a funny song, but anyway, Stewart was incredibly gracious and with his time, and was written hundreds of songs and had traveled everywhere and been everywhere, and so I could tell a story. He was a great role model. I mean, it's like, that's when I say listen, it's go find people like Stewart and just absorb what they're doing, and some of it's bound to eke back out in something that you're doing.
I just think that's so awesome. As we wrap this up, Roger, could you please, if somebody's listening who maybe finds themselves working in a radio station, writing commercials, or maybe they're about getting ready to do a marketing presentation, but they have this feeling or this need that they want to start making music. If you could talk to them, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them, go do it badly until you get good at it. It's like a lot of people don't start things because they think that they won't be any good at it. I know I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of not doing stuff because I'm afraid I'll screw it up or, it'd be bad. But I would just say is that just go do. If you want to do something, just go do it, and don't worry about how it's received, and please take the time to do it badly so that you'll know how to do it right. Mm-hmm. That's probably the best advice I can give to somebody who wants to start writing songs. To this day, my hero is my daughter, who started writing songs and playing on 6th Street at 16 when she was 16, and boy, she has a string of songs that just shred old boyfriends.
That's awesome.
But they were good songs, I think it's just a matter of just do it, and do it as if you're gonna do sketching. Do it as if you're gonna pick up watercolors, and do it in your studio at home. Don't do it for a stage. Do it for you, and eventually it'll come through. I mean, I didn't write Katrina for it to be a hit or for I just did it because my reaction to that tragedy and watching those poor people and the hell they had to go through, and the nonchalance of the leadership of the politicians was beyond the pale, and I felt like it had to be articulated some way. I kind of do. That's why I do Substack.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want it to be done in such a way as to, make anybody else feel like they have to respond to it.
So we put that on your sign behind you there. Can you please share to us, what does High, Wide, and Handsome, what is the lore behind that?
I have a print that was put out by a printing company to demonstrate their printing capabilities, and it is a pastel picture of what is obviously Tex Ritter. It's not a picture. It's just a drawing, a pastel drawing, of 3 guys in cowboy hats singing, and one of them in the front holding the guitar, and it's obviously Tex Ritter because it's got the words "High Noon" bubbled above him, right? And are you familiar with that movie?
No, but I know I know
song?
Tex Ritter.
Yeah. So, by the way, fascinating movie. But anyway, I've got this print that sits above my my desk at home, and my writing desk, and somebody says you have to come up with a name for your Substack, and I just went, oh, it said High, Wide, and Handsome down below it too, and I said, oh, High, Wide, and Handsome. So it's 2 out of 3 are correct.
I just I love your Substack. When you first told me, I spent probably a week straight trying to find, because I think I'd misunderstood you, and I was typing all these different things, and then I finally, when the next time I saw you, I was able to get it. It's fascinating to read all the amazing things that you share on your Substack. It's very cool, a cool way to get to know you as a person and as a songwriter. How do you feel now as you look back? Because there's something I wanted to ask you about, where you said that I'm in good company with Pete Townsend. It was a post. It had songs. Can you, because I want people to understand the power of when you just go for it. Can you explain about that post that you made?
Oh, it's a ukulele. It's a ukulele band from California that picked up Rusty Things, and so but it's the covers they also do are like The Who and
Okay.
and I guess they've got Carla Bonoff in there and some really good songwriters in there, but they picked up Rusty Things. I sent you a video of my friend Ivan Boudreau, who heard Rusty Things. I played it in Christy Moore's living room one night. He's a lifelong traveling musician doing as a bass player, but he plays and writes great songs, hundreds of songs. And I played Rusty Things, and he said, "Can I have that song?" And I said, "Yeah." And this was years ago, and like you say, you sing it. He said it's the only song, even including all the ones of his own, and he still gigs, that he doesn't need the lyrics for. And he plays it in every show he does, and he plays it first, and what always invariably happens is that the audience starts singing the chorus at the end, which is pretty cool. But anyway, he went to Northern California because he knew these people, and he played Rusty Things, and they said, "Send us that song." And now they put it on their CD. And because all these are covers that I don't think that they intend to play. Tusa Records is their label, but I don't think that they intend to pay ASCAP PMI fees on. They haven't put it online. They haven't made this available for streaming. So they just simply sent me a CD of the recording. So I had a recording of it, but it's a ukulele band, and so it's a much different kind of presentation of it. And I think the thing that is gratifying to me about the song is that a number of people have done it, and some of them do it. Even the one I think I did a blog on with Todd Withers does it. Or one of my Substacks is the story of how I wrote it, of what inspired it. But there's a Todd Withers version on there as well, and it's a different melody, but it's the same song, and it does not lose any meaning or any. I really enjoy listening to that. So it's nice to have. It would be nice if everybody, you say, well, we've got to record that. Well, what I feel good about is that enough good songwriters and musicians want to play it that I don't feel the need to have to record it, because I just feel like if you can write something that other people want to absorb and make part of themselves, I don't know any higher compliment to play a songwriter. So that's for me is gratifying. And all these other songs, although, I mean, I will tell you one last story about Peter Himmelman. Have I talked to you about him?
No.
So one of my Crooked Crow friends is a woman named Kate Graves, who used to live in Nashville and was a great singer-songwriter. And she called me up or got a hold of me and said, do you want to be in this group, online group with Peter Himmelman? I said, I don't know Peter, but yeah, I'll be in your group.
Uh-huh.
Well, Peter is more of a guru than a songwriter.
Okay.
But he's written literally hundreds of songs.
Uh-huh.
Punk rock band songs, children's songs, and won Emmys for his theme song to dramas, network dramas. And he's also Bob Dylan's son-in-law.
Okay.
He married Bob Dylan's adopted daughter.
Okay.
And so what I learned from him was you have to love your songs, because I'll write songs. And what I've been doing lately is going back, remember what he said, going back and going to these old songs that I wrote, and I thought, nobody will like this. Nobody will like this. Nobody will like this. And pulling them back out and playing them again. I played one last week. And by going back now, I'm going, well, those aren't so bad. So I've learned to just appreciate my songs, and my whole deal about playing out is just to play through all my songs. I'm not going to play. I've just recently repeated a song, and I haven't written that many, but I'm starting to run out of songs. I'll write some more, but it just seems a shame. It's like having a guitar in the closet that you never play, or having a song you've written that doesn't get heard. Just seems like, kind of, putting it in the closet. I just wanted to get it out there. And once it's out there, if I never play it again or nobody hears it again, I will feel comfortable that at least that I've taken this thing that I chose to start doing so late in life and embraced it to the point to where I'm saying, yeah, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. My wife inspires me in that because of her watercolors, which are really amazing. And they're not original. I mean, she'll find something and she'll reproduce it and do it in her own style. But she's put it out there. I mean, she's a real, she's really a kind of a close-in person in a lot of respects. But putting her work out there, she has no qualms about it at all. And so I feel like if you feel like you've got something, do it, and know that not everybody's going to like it. So I don't know, but your stuff is, I mean, just to turn the table, I mean, your stuff is great. You got a great voice. You have great stage presence.
Thank you so much.
You've got a gift to do, and you've got a lot of runway.
No, that means a lot. Thank you. So coming from you, that means a lot.
That's the thing that you get to be my age, which is 74, and you're saying, this is a pretty short runway. I hope this thing will take off.
I thank you so much for being so generous to come here to perform and to let me ask you all of these questions, and for being so open and for sharing. I know that this is going to be like a booster rocket for a lot of people who are on the fence. And I already know that I'm going to call the episode, this is lucky episode 13, Go and Make Stuff with Roger Edmundson. So
Well, thank you for having me, and I've enjoyed meeting you, and look forward to making music and doing stuff together going forward. And that's the nice thing about this meeting new people. Like even though Stuart Michael's not here, but gosh, that experience of being with him and meeting new people like yourself and Bruce Jones, who plays at the deli. It's just kind of expands your world, and that if you're getting to this age and your world's not collapsing but expanding, that's a good thing.
That's awesome. So keep fighting the good fight. Remember that it's always the right time to start, and it's too late to quit. You got this.
I make believe that it's real. Let me start over. I make believe that it's real, make real disappear. That's part of the deal. The sky's the limit, the limit's ignored. There was no end to the worlds I explored. I built castles and I tore them down. I built castles and I tore them down. Captured the king, I took his crown. I found treasures in piles of junk. I pirated gold from the ships that I sunk. When I was wild and young and free, I could be anything I wanted to be. When I was wild and young and free, I could be anyone but me. I was a hero, and I wore a mask. When there was trouble, I got there fast. A man of steel with a long red cape. Damsels distressed, I helped them escape. I was the Mick, Yogi and the Babe. I was an all-star in the Hall of Fame, and I hit homers and I stole home. I made the catch that saved the game. When I was wild and young and free, I could be anything I wanted to be. When I was wild and young and free, I could be anyone but me. I was the captain of the team. I called the plays and I made the schemes. I scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I got the girl and I won the gold. And when I was wild and young and free, I could be anything I wanted to be. When I was wild and young and free, I could be anyone but me. I could be anyone but me. That had some blemishes.
It sounds so good, man. It sounds so good.